The Big Buck Profile is brought to you by the New York State Big Buck Club.
Well, here we are at the banquet in the bear category. We always do one monster bear out of New York a year. So tell us about it.
So spending a lot of time deer hunting mostly over the years, and this past year decided I was going to mix up my food plots a little bit, typically do turnips and clover.
Yep.
Decided I was going to do a little sweet corn last year, and figured I could eat a little bit of it. Before I could actually get to it, had a group of bears that came through, and it actually decimated the entire field. It was really disappointing. So I said to a couple of buddies I hunt with, I get an opportunity to take a bear, I'm going to get my corn back.
Yeah.
And it was a Friday evening. Climbed in the stand, really no different than any other evening. Had some deer come out into the field early, and my stand's literally right off this field. And heard something behind me, didn't think anything of it, and turned around, and he was standing behind me at 60 yards, just coming up from behind, and had a big pine tree about 40 yards between, from where the stand was, and he actually got to that pine tree, and he climbed up the pine tree.
Really?
Climbed up the pine tree, got about 20 feet up in the tree. There's a honeycomb, and creates a V, and the bees have been swarming in there, and he got in there and he was trying to pull those bees out of the V in the tree.
Sure.
Climbs back down, smaller sapling was just off of it. He stood up and he rubbed his back out, and he turned and he was going to head in right in the field behind me. And by this point now, he was about 20 yards out, and I grabbed my bow and I turned to my left-hand side, was waiting for him to come right off and right into the field, and he stopped. He caught my wind. My wind was blowing directly right into his nose. And I said, well, the game's up. He's going to turn around. And he's going to head right back down in the swamp where he came from. And he stopped, and he looked around, and he turned, and he looked me right up in the tree. And he knew I was there. He knew
Sure.
something was up. Looked at me, sat back down, and he kind of looked out in the field, turned around to head back into the woods, and there was a log pile. And he actually stopped on that log pile, rubbed his belly out on the log pile, laid on the log, looked around a little bit more, and this has been over 15 minutes now that he's been in the area. Instead of going back where he came from, he went behind the tree. I now had to turn completely around because I'm a righty, turn him back around so that I can get a shot as he's kind of going away from me. And he makes a left-hand turn and comes walking right by the stand at 10 yards.
Oh, boy.
Walks by at 10 yards, and all the nerves in the world going,
Yeah, it's a big bear.
trying to compose myself, and he didn't stop where I needed him to get a shot at him, and he actually kept going, and he got up to this. There's a log road right in front of me that goes out into the swamp, and it's about 15 yards out, and I figured he's going to make the right-hand turn. He's going to go back in there, and I'll get a shot at him going away. And instead of making the right, he made a left and walked right in front of the stand at 12 yards. He stopped, let the arrow go, watched the luminox disappear right behind his front shoulder, and the rest was really history from there. So it was a wild experience. Had him on film a couple times throughout the season, which was pretty neat, but never expected that I would run into him. And
so what did he measure out at on his skull?
yeah, so skull measurements, he went 19 and 15 sixteenths.
Okay.
He just missed 20 inches. We went and got him measured, and I was busting Gary. He was the one that did the measurement out in Broome County, and I was like, well, how do I get an extra 16th? And he's like, well, if you close the mouth, we might have been able to get it there. And I was like, you know what? I didn't expect anything that day.
Still a giant bear.
It was awesome.
What did it weigh? Did you guys scale it?
Yeah, so field dressed out, he went 309.
Good one.
So got him right out of Tioga County.
Nice.
It was a great experience. So I've got a handful more up there that are running the hill, which
Absolutely.
is pretty neat to see. So
They're kind of taking over New York.
they really are.
Yeah.
It's wild. We've seen a sow with 2 cubs and 3 cubs over the last 4 years up there.
Sure.
So it's they're no longer traveling through. They're starting to set up shop.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
It's pretty neat to see them.
Especially if they find agriculture.
They do.
They move in quick.
Yep. So
Hey, thank you very much for sharing your story, man. That's a big bear.
Thank you very much.
It's a big bear.
absolutely. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome.